Sarah Chen stood at the viewing deck of the medical ship, Mercy's Hand, watching the smoke rise from the burning cities below. For the third time this year, she was here on Kepler 442b, watching human doctors work around the clock to save lives that other species had put in danger. The insect-like HFY colonists scurried around the makeshift hospital tents. Their green blood mixed with the red sand as human medics carried stretcher after stretcher from the landing zones. Children with broken wings whimpered as human nurses cleaned their wounds with gentle hands. Another successful raid by the Chronari Empire, Dr. Martinez said as he joined Sarah at the window. His white coat was stained with both green and red blood. They hit the farming districts first, then the schools. Same pattern as always. Sarah nodded but said nothing. She had seen this too many times before. The Chronari would attack a weaker species. The victims would cry for help. The Galactic Confederation would send strongly worded letters, and humans would arrive to clean up the mess. The Chronari Empire was the galaxy's biggest bully. They had ships like flying fortresses and warriors who lived only for battle. For 200 years they had taken what they wanted from smaller species, and for 200 years humans had been the ones to fix what the Chronari broke. Ambassador Chen, a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Captain Torres approaching. His face was grim. "We have a problem. The Chronari are requesting medical aid." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "What do you mean?" "Some of their soldiers got hurt in the fighting. They want our doctors to treat them." Through the window, Sarah could see a group of tall, gray-skinned Chronari warriors standing near the human medical tents. They wore their black armor even when wounded. Blood dripped from cuts on their faces, but they showed no pain. These were the same beings who had burned HFY homes just hours ago. "Our doctors are already treating them," Torres continued. "Dr. Martinez said we don't turn anyone away, no matter who they are." Sarah watched as a human nurse carefully bandaged a Chronari soldier's arm. The warrior looked down at the small human with what might have been confusion. He probably had never seen an enemy help him before. This was humanity's way. They helped everyone. They shared their medicine, their food, their technology. When other species fought wars, humans built hospitals. When aliens destroyed cities, humans brought construction crews. When the galaxy burned, humans offered water. And what did they get for it? Nothing. Sarah's communication device buzzed. A message from Earth Central Command. The Galactic Confederation Council was holding an emergency meeting about the Kepler 442b situation. She was ordered to attend immediately. 3 hours later, Sarah sat in the Great Hall of the Confederation Space Station. The room was enormous, with seats for representatives from 847 different species. Most of the seats were empty. The smaller species rarely bothered to attend these meetings anymore. They knew their voices did not matter. The Chronari delegation sat in the front row. Their ambassador, a massive warrior named Thakmor, wore ceremonial armor covered in the bones of his enemies. He spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "The HFY colonies on Kepler 442b have resources that rightfully belong to the Chronari Empire," he declared. "Our ancient star charts show this system was once part of our territory." Sarah almost laughed. Ancient star charts. The Chronari had probably drawn those maps yesterday. The HFY representative, a small female named Kliktar, stood on shaking legs. "Please, honored council, we have lived on these worlds for 300 years. We have families there, children. We have done nothing wrong. The Chronari claim is valid under Section 47 of the Galactic Peace Accords," announced Councillor Veltar, the fish-like being who served as council president. "Historical territorial rights supersede current occupation claims." Sarah stood up. "May I remind the council that the peace accords also guarantee protection for colonists who have lived peacefully on a world for over 50 years. Veltar's large eyes turned toward her. "The council recognizes the human ambassador. Thank you. The HFY have been on Kepler 442b for 3 centuries. They have built cities, farms, schools. They have made these worlds their home. The Chronari abandoned any claim to this system over 1,000 years ago." Thakmor rose to his feet. He towered over Sarah even from across the room. "Humans speak of things they do not understand. The weak do not deserve worlds that the strong can use better. The Confederation was built on the idea that might does not make right," Sarah replied. "Every species has equal say in these matters." A sound like laughter came from the Chronari section. "Equal say? Humans are barely 200 years in space. You are children playing at diplomacy." Veltar banged his gavel. The Council will now vote on Resolution 4471. All those in favor of granting historical territorial rights to the Chronari Empire for the Kepler 442b system? Sarah watched in horror as hand after hand rose around the chamber. Species that had received human aid, human protection, human technology, all voting to give 3 peaceful worlds to an empire of raiders. All those opposed? Only one hand rose. Sarah's own. Resolution 4471 passes, 743 votes in favor, 1 opposed. The room erupted in clicking, chirping, and growling sounds that passed for applause among the various alien species. Sarah remained standing as chaos swirled around her. Clicktar collapsed in her seat, her antenna drooping with despair. The other Vex High representatives huddled around her, their insect voices making high-pitched keening sounds. Sarah tried to speak again. Council President, I request permission to address the vote. Veltar was already shuffling his papers. The matter is decided, Ambassador Chen. We move to the next item on the agenda. I formally request speaking time under Article 12 of the Confederation Charter. Request denied. The schedule is full. Sarah looked around the chamber. These beings had just voted to hand over 3 peaceful worlds to raiders and murderers, and they would not even let her speak against it. For 2 centuries, humans had bled for the galaxy. They had died protecting species that saw them as useful fools. They had shared everything and asked for nothing in return except the chance to help others. And this was their reward. To be ignored, to watch as everything they stood for was voted away by creatures who cared only for their own comfort. Sarah reached up and removed the small silver badge from her collar. It was her translator device, the symbol of her office as a Confederation diplomat. She held it up so the entire chamber could see. The room slowly fell silent as beings realized what she was doing. Sarah spoke in perfect standard galactic, the common language of space. Her accent was gone. Her voice was cold and clear. The Terran Federation withdraws from these proceedings. We have been kind. We have been patient. We have been generous. She dropped the translator badge to the floor. It made a small ringing sound as it hit the metal. That ends now. Sarah turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Behind her, 846 species sat in stunned quiet. At the door, she stopped and looked back one final time. Humanity gave you our best. You threw it away. Do not expect us to offer it again. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. In the chamber, Veltar stared at the silver badge lying on the floor. For the first time in his long life, the council president felt something that might have been fear. Thakmor broke the silence with his grinding laugh. Let the humans sulk. They are builders and healers, not warriors. The galaxy is better without their weakness. But as the Chronari ambassador spoke those words, deep space sensors around human territory began detecting something new, signals that had never been heard before, the sound of a sleeping giant beginning to wake. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds where human hospitals stood and human ships patrolled, small lights began going out one by one. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Chen walked out of the Confederation Council. At first, most species barely noticed that humans were gone. The Vex High noticed first. Click. Tar stood in the ruins of her colony's main city on Kepler 442b. The Chronari had come back 3 times since the council vote. Each time they took more. Each time they killed more. Send another message to the Terran Federation, she told her communication officer. Tell them we need medical supplies. Tell them we have wounded children. The young Vex High's antenna twitched nervously. I sent 17 messages this week, Administrator. No response. Clicktar's compound eyes reflected the smoke from burning buildings. For 3 centuries, humans had always come when called. Always brought food, medicine, protection. Now there was only silence. The Chronari raiders would return tomorrow. Everyone knew it. And for the first time in living memory, no human ships would rise from the planet's surface to drive them away. In space above the Centauri Federation's capital world, Admiral Thexmore faced a different problem. His patrol fleet was supposed to escort a convoy of grain ships through the outer rim. Pirates had been attacking supply lines for months. Sir, the convoy is requesting immediate departure, his communications officer reported. They say they cannot wait any longer. Thexmore studied the star charts. The route passed through 3 systems where human patrol ships usually waited. Those ships had guaranteed safe passage for over a century. Now the routes were empty. Tell the convoy they travel at their own risk, he decided. We cannot spare escorts for the full journey. 2 days later, the grain convoy disappeared. 17 ships carrying food for 3 billion beings gone without a trace. The pirates had grown bold in the absence of human protection. Similar reports came from across the galaxy. Trade routes that had been safe for generations now crawled with raiders. Humanitarian crises that humans would have solved in days stretched into months. Border disputes that human diplomats would have prevented turned into shooting wars. But the galaxy was vast. Most species had their own problems. The absence of humans was an inconvenience, not a crisis. Yet strange reports began to filter in from the edges of human space. Captain Mordek of the Hegemony Survey Corps was the first to see it. His science ship had been mapping stellar phenomena near the Sol system when his sensors detected something. Impossible. Check those readings again, he ordered. His sensor officer. I have checked them 17 times, Captain. The energy signatures are accurate. Mordek stared at the display screen. Around Earth's sun, massive construction projects were underway. Not the usual human projects like hospitals or farms. These structures were different, darker, industrial. What are they building out there? His sensor officer, a nervous little being named Pipek, tapped his console with shaking fingers. Unknown, sir. But the power readings suggest military applications. Military applications. Humans did not build military anything. They built medical stations and research outposts and refugee centers. They were the galaxy's helpers, not its warriors. Mordek decided to investigate. His ship approached the edge of human space, broadcasting standard diplomatic channels. The response came immediately. Not from Earth, but from something else. Unknown vessel, you are approaching restricted space. Turn back immediately. The voice was human. But wrong somehow. Cold. Final. This is Captain Mordek of the Hegemony Science Corps. We request permission to enter Sol system for routine stellar observation. Permission denied. Turn back or face consequences. Mordek had dealt with humans for decades. They were always polite, always helpful. This was different. I demand to speak with Earth Central Command under the Treaty of Open Skies. The silence stretched for long seconds. Then new contacts appeared on his sensors. Ships rising from hidden positions around him, ships unlike anything humans had ever built before. The Treaty of Open Skies was dissolved when the Terran Federation withdrew from Confederation Accords, the voice said. You have 10 seconds to reverse course. Mordek looked at his tactical display. The human ships were sleek angular things that seemed to bend light around them. His own vessel was a scientific research ship with no weapons and light shields. Turn us around, he ordered quietly. As his ship fled toward the nearest space lane, Mordek could not stop thinking about those ships. Where had they come from? How had humans built them so quickly? And why did they radiate such menace? Reports like Mordek's began appearing across the galaxy. Human space was sealed off by automated defense platforms that destroyed any ship that came too close. Long-range sensors detected massive industrial activity around every human world, signals that made no sense using technologies that seemed impossible. Admiral Thexmore brought these reports to the Confederation Council. The humans are obviously preparing some kind of response to their diplomatic failure, he announced to the assembled delegates. I recommend we send a fleet to investigate. Counselor Veltar's fish-like face showed concern. What kind of response? Unknown. But humans are builders and healers, not warriors. They are probably constructing refugee habitats or medical stations. Their tantrum will pass when they realize the galaxy needs their help. The Chronari delegation laughed at this. Thakmore stood and gestured with one massive arm. Let the humans build whatever they wish. They are weak. They have always been weak. Without the galaxy to protect, they will grow weaker still. But not everyone was so confident. In the medical bay of a Confederation hospital ship, Dr. Yillara studied reports from the war zones. Without human medical aid, casualty rates had tripled. Without human food shipments, famines were spreading. Without human peacekeepers, small conflicts were becoming major wars. How long can this continue? She asked her colleague, Dr. Pendar. The elderly physician shook his head sadly. The galaxy has grown dependent on human generosity. We took it for granted. Now we are learning what life was like before they arrived. What was life like before? Brutal, Pendar said simply. The strong took from the weak. The weak died. That was the natural order. Dr. Yillara thought about this as she worked. Humans had changed that natural order. They had made the galaxy gentler, safer, more hopeful. Without them, everything was reverting to the old ways. Will they come back? She asked. Pendar was quiet for a long time. I do not know, but I fear that when they do return, they will not be the same humans who left. As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The captain's voice echoed over the communication system. All crew to emergency stations. We are receiving a broadcast from Earth. All crew to emergency stations. In the command center, hundreds of beings gathered around the main communication array. The message was short, broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. It was a single word, spoken in perfect chronery by a human voice that carried no emotion at all. Enough. The transmission ended, leaving only static. In the silence that followed, Admiral Thexmore felt something he had not experienced since he was a young officer. Fear. Pure, cold fear that started in his stomach and spread through his entire body. What do you think it means? Someone whispered. But deep down they all knew what it meant. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, humanity was no longer building hospitals. They were building something else entirely. And soon, very soon, the galaxy was going to learn what humans looked like when they stopped being kind. The invasion of the Centauri Federation began at dawn on a Tuesday. President Kalara of Centauri Prime watched from her office window as Chronari warships filled the sky like black storms. They had come without warning, without demands, without mercy. The first bombardment turned the capital city's eastern district into glass. The second hit the spaceport, trapping millions of civilians on the planet's surface. The third destroyed the planetary defense grid. Send word to the Confederation Council, Kalara ordered her aide. Tell them we are under attack. I already did, Madam President. They said they will consider our request for aid at next week's session. Next week's session. Kalara closed her eyes. By next week, there would be nothing left to save. What about the humans? She asked, though she already knew the answer. No response from Earth. Human space remained sealed. Outside, Chronari soldiers were landing in the city streets. Their black armor gleamed as they marched past burning buildings. These were not raiders looking for supplies. This was conquest. Commander Zarthek stood on the bridge of the Chronari flagship Blood of Warriors. He was the greatest military mind his species had produced in 1,000 years. He had conquered 17 systems and broken the will of a dozen species. This battle was going exactly as planned. Status report, he commanded. All major cities are under bombardment. Their fleet is destroyed. Resistance is minimal, his tactical officer reported. The Centaurians are requesting surrender negotiations. Zarthek smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Denied. Continue the bombardment. We take everything, leave nothing. For too long, the Centaurians had hidden behind human protection. They had grown soft, weak, dependent on others for their safety. Now they would learn what real power looked like. Sir, the communications officer called out. New contacts on long-range sensors. More Centaurian ships? Unknown. The signatures are strange. Zarthek moved to the sensor station. On the display, he could see new ships emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Ships unlike anything he had ever seen before. They were not the bulky, practical vessels that humans usually flew. These ships were sleek and angular, like weapons given shape. They moved through space with predatory grace, radiating menace even at rest. How many? Zarthek asked. 50. No, 100. Sir, they keep coming. The tactical display filled with red dots as more ships appeared. Each one was different, but all shared the same threatening design. They formed battle lines with mechanical precision, moving like parts of a single mind. Are they human ships? The energy signatures match human technology but evolved. Advanced. Evolved. Zarthek studied the formation. These were not the ships of builders and healers. These were warships, built for one purpose only. Send a message to the fleet, he ordered. All ships prepare for battle. The response came not from the new ships, but from a single transmission broadcast across all frequencies. A human voice, calm and emotionless. Chronari forces, you are in violation of Centauri space. You have 10 Minutes to withdraw all military assets from this system. Zarthek laughed. Or what, humans? You will file a complaint with the Confederation Council. Silence answered him. I am Commander Zarthek of the Kronari Empire. I have conquered more worlds than your species has words for. You think your peaceful little ships frighten me? Still no response. Zarthek's anger grew. I fought in the Battle of Zarian where 10,000 warriors died in a single hour. I led the siege of Kelmar that lasted 7 years. You want to threaten me? Then come and try. The silence stretched for exactly 10 minutes. Then the human fleet moved. Zarthek had been in space combat for 40 years. He had seen every type of battle, every kind of weapon, every possible tactic. What happened next broke every rule he knew about warfare. The human ships did not form battle lines. They did not exchange long-range fire. They did not follow any pattern from the military textbooks. They simply appeared in the middle of the Kronari fleet. How did they? Zarthek began, but the words died in his throat. The human ships moved through his formation like ghosts made of metal and death. Kronari vessels that had survived 100 battles exploded without warning. Shields that had never failed collapsed instantly. Weapons that could crack planets fired uselessly at targets that danced between the energy beams. Return fire, Zarthek screamed. All ships return fire. But there was nothing to fire at. The human ships were there and then they were not. They struck from impossible angles and vanished before his gunners could respond. The Fist of Rage, his strongest battleship, died in seconds. Its hull simply came apart like paper in the wind. The Blood Oath managed to fire a full salvo before its command center disappeared in a flash of light that left no debris. Sir, his tactical officer called out, his voice cracking with panic. The Iron Will is reporting that their weapons are not functioning. Something is jamming their systems. Impossible. Kronari weapons do not jam. The Death's Edge just lost all power. They are drifting dead in space. Zarthek watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were being destroyed with casual efficiency. The humans were not just winning, they were demonstrating. Send surrender signal, he ordered. Sir, send the surrender signal. His communications officer worked frantically at his console, sending on all frequencies. Sir, they are not responding. Another explosion lit up the darkness as the bone crusher broke apart. Then, the fear incarnate. Then, the Skull Mountain. Zarthek realized with growing horror that the humans were not interested in surrender. They were not interested in negotiations or peace talks or prisoner exchanges. They were interested only in complete destruction. Emergency jump, he commanded. All remaining ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. Jump drives are not responding. Something is blocking our escape. The human ships continued their deadly dance. They moved like they knew exactly where each Kronari vessel would be before it got there, like they had studied Kronari tactics for years and found them wanting. The blood of warriors shuddered as weapons fire scorched its hull. Through the viewport, Zarthek could see a human ship approaching. It was smaller than his flagship, but radiated such menace that his crew backed away from the windows. This is Admiral Marcus Kane of the Terran Warfleet, a voice said over the communication system. You have something that belongs to the Centauri Federation. Zarthek found his voice. What do you want? Your immediate departure from this system. Permanently. We will withdraw. The Kronari Empire recognizes Centauri territorial claims. No, Kane said simply. You misunderstand. We are not negotiating. The human ship's weapons powered up. Zarthek could see them through his viewport, glowing with barely contained energy. Wait, we surrender. We accept all terms. The time for surrender was 10 minutes ago. You chose to fight instead. The last thing Commander Zarthek saw was a flash of light that turned the greatest military mind in Kronari history into scattered atoms. On Centauri Prime, President Kellara watched the battle's end from her office window. The Kronari ships were gone. All of them. In their place, human vessels hung in the sky like silent guardians. A communication came through on her personal channel. President Kellara, this is Admiral Kane. Centauri space is secure. Admiral, I thank you. We owe you everything. You owe us nothing. But remember this day. Remember what happens when peaceful species are threatened. I will never forget. The human ships began to leave, disappearing into hyperspace one by one. But their message remained. Across the galaxy, species that had grown comfortable with Chronari aggression felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. The news traveled fast. The Chronari Empire's entire battle fleet had been destroyed in less than an hour by beings who used to build hospitals, and somewhere in the dark between stars humanity continued preparing for what came next. The news of the Chronari Empire's destruction reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 councils, the same questions were asked. How had the humans done it? Where had those ships come from? And most importantly, who was next? The answer came faster than anyone expected. Counselor Veltar stood before the emergency session of the Confederation Council. His usually calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. The Terran Federation has agreed to address the Council, he announced. They will speak regarding their recent military actions. The Great Chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 800 species filled the seats, all wanting to hear what humanity had to say about the complete annihilation of the galaxy's most feared military force. The main screen flickered to life, showing not Ambassador Chen but a human in military uniform. His face was scarred, his eyes were cold, and his bearing spoke of violence barely held in check. I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane, he said without preamble. I speak for the Terran Federation in all military matters. Thakmor, the surviving Chronari representative, rose shakily to his feet. The proud warrior looked like he had aged years in the past week. Admiral Kane, the Chronari Empire demands an explanation for your unprovoked attack on our fleet. Kane's expression did not change. Your forces invaded sovereign Centauri space and committed acts of war against civilians. We responded appropriately. You destroyed an entire battle fleet. Thousands of warriors died. Yes, Kane said simply. They chose to fight. We accommodated their choice. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Species after species demanded explanations, apologies, assurances that humanity would return to their peaceful ways. Kane waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke again, his voice cut through the chaos like a blade. For 200 years, the Terran Federation subsidized galactic peace with human blood. We built your hospitals. We fed your hungry. We protected your weak. We asked for nothing in return except representation in this council. He paused, letting his words sink in. 6 months ago, you voted to give our allies' worlds to raiders and murderers. When we protested, you denied us the right to speak. You made it clear that human lives, human sacrifice, human generosity meant nothing to you. Veltar tried to interrupt. Admiral, surely we can discuss. I am not finished. Kane's voice carried such authority that the council president fell silent immediately. The Terran Federation hereby announces the end of all humanitarian aid to Confederation members. No more medical supplies, no more food shipments, no more protection of your trade routes. You wanted to treat us as irrelevant. Consider yourselves granted that wish. The chamber exploded in protests. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding that humanity continue their obligations, that they honor old treaties, that they think of the greater good. Kane watched the chaos with cold amusement. Additionally, any species that has profited from exploiting human generosity while denying us basic rights will face consequences. What kind of consequences? Someone shouted. Kane smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. The hegemony of 6 will discover that shortly. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. 3 systems away, Overlord Malik Tor of the hegemony of 6 was having his own crisis. For 2 months, his scientists had been reverse engineering human medical technology, planning to claim it as their own invention. The profits would have made the hegemony the richest nation in the galaxy. Now his long-range sensors were screaming warnings about ships approaching from human space. How many vessels? He demanded. 12. His sensor operator replied. But sir, they are not attacking our worlds. They are targeting our military installations only. Malik Tor watched on the tactical display as human ships moved through his territory like surgeons with scalpels. His military bases simply vanished, deleted from existence with clinical precision. His defensive fleets were systematically dismantled, their crews left alive but their ships reduced to scrap. "Send a message to the human fleet," he ordered. "Tell them we are willing to negotiate." The response came immediately. The hegemony of Six has stolen human medical technology valued at 2.7 trillion credits. You have 48 hours to return all stolen data and pay restitution to the Terran Federation. And if we refuse, then your military capacity will be permanently removed. Malik Tor looked at his advisors. His most senior general, a battle-scarred veteran named Korth, shook his head grimly. "Sir, our forces cannot stop them. Whatever technology they are using, it is beyond our ability to counter." "How is that possible? Humans were barely spacefaring when my grandfather ruled." "I do not know, sir, but I recommend immediate compliance with their demands." For the first time in his life, Malik Tor felt what his victims had experienced for generations. The cold fear of facing an enemy he could not fight, could not escape, could not reason with. "Send word to all our bases. Return the human medical data immediately." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Veltar Consortium discovered that their commercial fleet had vanished overnight. Every ship found drifting in space with their crews unconscious, but alive. The cargo holds were empty, their contents returned to the human colonies they had been stolen from. The hegemony's military academies received visits from human ships that landed without permission and departed with detailed records of every strategy, every tactical plan, every secret the hegemony had spent centuries developing. On the industrial world of Nexus 4, factories that had been producing weapons with stolen human technology simply stopped working. Their machinery was intact, their workers unharmed, but the factories would never function again. Each action was precise, surgical, devastating. Humanity was not destroying these civilizations. They were teaching them lessons. The most shocking revelation came when human ships broadcast intercepted communications across the galaxy. Conversations between Confederation leaders planning to exploit human generosity. Agreements to vote against human interests in exchange for bribes. Detailed plans to claim human technology as their own. The galaxy learned exactly how their prosperity had been built on human suffering. In the Confederation Council chambers, emergency sessions ran around the clock. Species that had never worried about human opinion suddenly found themselves desperately trying to prove they had not exploited humanity's kindness. "We must send delegations to Earth," Veltar announced during one chaotic session. "We must negotiate a return to the old arrangements." "With what leverage?" asked the representative from the Korth Republic. "They have demonstrated they do not need us. We need them." Admiral Thexmore, who had once dismissed human military capability, stood with shaking hands. "My analysts have studied their attack patterns. Their technology has advanced centuries beyond ours in just 6 months. How is that possible?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Pendar, the elderly physician who had treated patients in human hospitals for decades, requested permission to address the council. "Honored delegates," he said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "I have worked alongside humans for most of my life. I have seen their medical technology, their engineering capabilities, their scientific knowledge." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "We always assumed they shared everything with us out of kindness. We were wrong. They shared a tiny fraction of what they possessed. The rest they kept hidden, stored away, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Veltar asked. "For us to prove whether we deserved their trust. We failed that test." The implication hit the chamber like a physical blow. Humanity had always been more advanced than anyone realized. They had simply chosen to appear weak, chosen to help rather than conquer, chosen kindness over dominance, and the galaxy had mistaken that choice for weakness. "What do they want from us now?" someone whispered. Dr. Pendar looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "I believe," he said quietly, "they want us to learn what it feels like to live without their protection. They want us to remember why we needed them in the first place." Outside the council chambers, across 1,000 worlds, that lesson was already beginning. Without human medical aid, plague ships drifted between systems spreading disease. Without human food shipments, famines ravaged worlds that had grown dependent on Earth's agriculture. Without human peacekeepers, old conflicts flared into wars that consumed entire systems. The galaxy was learning what life had been like before humanity arrived, and in the darkness between stars, Human ships continued their work, ensuring that those who had exploited kindness would never forget the price of their greed. 18 months after humanity withdrew from galactic politics, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again in the Great Hall of the Confederation Space Station. But this time, she was not a supplicant, begging for attention. She was the representative of the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. The chamber was different now. Where once 847 species had gathered in comfortable arrogance, now barely 300 delegates filled the seats. The rest had either joined humanity's new alliance or retreated into isolation, too proud to beg but too weak to fight. Chen looked across the assembled beings with calm satisfaction. These were the survivors of the old order, the species that still believed they could maintain their dominance through politics and manipulation. They were about to learn otherwise. The Terran Federation thanks the Council for agreeing to this meeting, Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the silent chamber. We have come to inform you of certain decisions that have been made. Councillor Veltar shifted nervously in his seat. The once proud leader of the Confederation now looked like a fish gasping for water. Ambassador Chen, surely we can return to the old arrangements. The galaxy needs human aid. Surely some compromise. There will be no compromise, Chen said simply. The time for negotiation ended when you voted to give our allies' worlds to murderers. What we offer now is a simple choice. She touched a control on her podium, and the chamber's main screen lit up with a star map. The galaxy was divided into 3 distinct colors: blue for the Terran Alliance, red for the Confederation Remnant, and gray for independent systems. Blue represents the Terran Alliance. 47 species who chose to acknowledge their past exploitation of human generosity and forge new relationships based on equality and mutual respect. They received the full benefits of human technology, protection, and aid. The blue sections covered nearly a third of the galaxy, including some of the richest and most strategically important systems. Gray represents independent systems. 212 species who chose isolation over choosing sides. We respect their decision and leave them alone. The gray areas were scattered throughout the galactic rim, mostly smaller species that had never been major players in galactic politics. Red represents the Confederation Remnant, the species in this chamber, along with your various client states and allies. You chose to maintain the old system of exploitation and dominance. The red area was smaller than it had been just months ago, as more species defected to either the Alliance or Independence every week. And what does red mean for us? Veltar asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. It means you are on your own, Chen replied. No human aid, no human protection, no human technology. You will live or die by your own strength. Thakmor, the Chronari representative, rose shakily to his feet. The once mighty warrior looked like a broken shadow of his former self. Our colonies are starving, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Our trade routes are under constant attack by pirates. Our wounded die because we lack medical supplies. Yes, Chen agreed. That is what the galaxy was like before humans arrived. You voted to return to those days. We simply granted your wish. We made mistakes, Veltar pleaded. Surely the spirit of human compassion was rejected by this council, Chen interrupted. You made it clear that our lives, our sacrifice, our generosity meant nothing to you. We have accepted your judgment. A new voice spoke from the chamber entrance. Admiral Kane entered, flanked by 2 human officers. His presence filled the room with barely contained menace. However, Kane said, his scarred face showing no emotion, the Terran Federation is not without mercy. Any species wishing to join the Alliance may apply for membership. What are the requirements? Asked the representative from the Quellan Empire. Chen smiled. It was not a kind expression. First, full disclosure of all resources, technology, and military capabilities. Second, reparations for any past exploitation of human generosity. Third, acceptance of human oversight in all military and diplomatic matters. The chamber erupted in outraged voices. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia would never accept such terms. Those terms are impossible, Veltar shouted. You ask us to surrender our sovereignty. We ask you to surrender your ability to exploit others, Kane corrected. Something you should have done voluntarily centuries ago. And if we refuse? Kane's expression did not change. Then you remain in the red zone, alone. The delegate from the Sixth Hegemony, a nervous little being named Pictar, raised a trembling hand. What about species that cannot survive on their own? The hegemony's agricultural worlds depend on imported technology. That is unfortunate, Chen said without sympathy. Perhaps you should have considered that before stealing human agricultural technology for 3 decades. We didn't know. You knew, Kane interrupted. We have the recordings. Your own scientists bragged about reverse engineering human innovations. Your economist calculated the profits from selling our medicine as your own invention. You knew exactly what you were doing. The chamber fell silent as the weight of their situation settled on the assembled delegates. For generations, they had built their prosperity on human sacrifice. Now the humans were gone, and the comfortable galaxy they remembered was crumbling around them. How long do we have to decide? Veltar asked quietly. The offer remains open indefinitely, Chen replied. But understand that the terms may become less favorable as time passes. The Terran alliance grows stronger every day, while the Confederation grows weaker. It was true. Even as she spoke, Chen knew that 3 more species were preparing to defect from the Confederation. The Marconian Republic had already sent secret envoys to Earth. The Stellar Compact was negotiating reparations for past wrongs. The old order was dying, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Admiral Kane stepped forward. There is one more thing the Council should know. 3 hours ago, a Confederation fleet attacked a Terran Alliance cargo convoy in the Vega system. Every being in the chamber tensed. They had all heard rumors of such attacks, desperate attempts by dying Confederation members to seize resources from their former victims. The attack was repelled, Kane continued. The attacking ships were disabled, their crews captured alive. They have been returned to Confederation space with a message. He touched his own control pad, and a new image appeared on the screen. It showed a massive space installation under construction around a red giant star. This is Fortress Sol, humanity's primary military construction facility. It is one of 17 such installations currently building what we call the Final Fleet. The image zoomed in, showing details that made seasoned military officers gasp in horror. Ships the size of small moons, weapons that could crack planets. Technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The Final Fleet will be completed in 1 year, Kane announced. Its purpose is simple, to ensure that the exploitation of peaceful species never happens again. Any civilization that chooses conquest over cooperation will face complete military destruction. Thakmor stared at the image with the expression of a being looking into his own grave. How many ships? Enough, Kane said simply. Chen stepped forward as the image faded. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. You can join us in building a new order based on equality and justice. You can choose isolation and neutrality, or you can continue down the path of exploitation and dominance. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who had once commanded star-spanning empires. Choose wisely. Because in 1 year, when the Final Fleet is complete, there will be no more chances. The meeting ended in silence. Delegates filed out of the chamber like mourners leaving a funeral, which in many ways they were. They were witnessing the death of an age. Chen remained behind, watching the empty seats where the galaxy's former rulers had sat in comfortable arrogance just 2 years ago. Kane joined her at the podium. Do you think any of them will accept the terms? Some will, Chen replied. Fear is a powerful motivator. But many will choose to fight rather than admit they were wrong. And then? Chen looked out at the viewport, where human ships hung in space like sleeping predators. Beyond them, construction crews worked around the clock on the projects that would reshape the galaxy. Then they will learn what humanity looks like when we truly stop being kind, she said quietly. The great hall fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Outside, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of light and darkness. But the rules that governed that dance had changed forever. Humanity had given the galaxy their best. When that gift was rejected, they had withdrawn their protection. When their generosity was exploited, they had withdrawn their aid. Now they were preparing to ensure that no species would ever again mistake human kindness for weakness. The age of exploitation was ending. The age of accountability had begun. And across the galaxy, on a million worlds, where the strong had once preyed upon the weak, new laws were being written in fire and steel by the children of Earth who had finally said enough.